Tonight's event is Creating Cinematic World Design with Olivier Dubard. And I'm very excited for what we have in store. It's going to be an amazing time. Before I introduce our guest, though, I'd like to do just a couple of things. And first is I'd like to thank Lenovo for sponsoring this event. Lenovo helps Gnomon continue to bring free educational events to you, and we're very, very thankful for that partnership. In addition, this live stream is going to be available to watch on our Twitch and YouTube channels after the event concludes. So, feel free to go back to that if you want to rewatch it, or if you weren't able to catch all of it, you'll be able to go back there and check it out. So with that said, guys, I'd like to now introduce our guest, Olivier Dubard. So Olivier is a concept and environment artist. He builds environments from concept to final, and he's worked on live action visual effects, AAA games, and animated feature films. Throughout his career, he worked at Sony Pictures Imageworks, Double Negative, Digital Domain, Microsoft, and Blue Sky, just to name a few. And he's contributed to various projects, including Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Gears of War, Black Panther, Hotel Transylvania, The Terminator, and Star Trek. Olivier also released 2 Gnomon workshop videos where he explains the workflow for creating environments for film and cinematics. And so with that, Olivier, welcome to the stream. Thank you for being here. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll just turn it over to you from here. I know you've got a lot of ground to cover, so take it away.
Yes, that's true. We have a lot of stuff to look at tonight. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor for me to be there, presenting to you that little project that I've been working on for the past few months. And as you can see on the title, it's called The Death Dealer. That's what I'm going to be showing you tonight. So to start, I'm pretty sure everybody knows already who Frank Frazetta is, but just to introduce him a little bit shortly, he's an illustrator, comic book artist. He's famous for Tarzan, for example. He's very known for his illustration of fantasy illustration. He did a lot of comic book covers, a lot of novels as well. And why Frazetta? Why the Death Dealer? Well, when I was in comic book school, I'm thinking about 10 years ago, we had to study a lot of painters, a lot of masters, and at some point, we had to study Frazetta because if you do comic books and illustration, well, you kind of have to know about the master of fantasy. So I had to look at all of his paintings, about a lot of his books. And at some point, I found this guy, the Death Dealer. The Death Dealer, who is, he's a character created by Frank Frazetta. He made a bunch of paintings based on this character. And I remember this, when I saw it for the first time, really, especially this painting on his horse, it really, really left a really strong impression on me. The contrast of the black and then the fire in the background, it was for me, it was really powerful. So it really stayed in my mind. And then you have his helmet is always in the dark. There's like blood on his axe, and the horse is just a big nasty horse, right? So that thing comes from hell. And I've always been really fascinated by his techniques and especially this character. So for the past a few months ago, I had I think somehow I found some images on my hard drive, and I was thinking, what if today, in 2020, we would make a game or a movie based on this character? Because this character is from the 70s, right? So I was thinking, what if we just take a new spin on it and kind of make it look like in today's world and audience taste, what would it look like? If I would make a pitch for it, how would my pitch would be looking like, for example? And funny enough, Halloween is approaching pretty soon, and this is also, I guess, a good Halloween movie to watch.
Absolutely.
If there will be a movie about it. So the first thing that I did was obviously look for references. So let me pull up really quick my reference board. For my references, I use PureRef. I know a lot of artists using it. It's really handy. And the first thing I did, obviously, was to gather a bunch of his artworks, mostly the Death Dealer. I do have all of his books at home, not here in New York, but back at home with my parents. And I remember he had little sketches. He drew a lot of the attitude drawings, some other paintings as well, that kind of has the same vibe. And so that's the first thing I did, is try to get into his style, try to really get to know the character himself from the creator. So that was the first step. The second step was, I remembered, since I was studying comic books, I bought a bunch of comic books as well, based on this series. And it was like about, I think, 6 or 7 books. And I actually went back to them before starting the project, and I read all of them. And there's a little bit of a story and stuff, how he becomes a Death Dealer and all that. And we'll see later that this has actually kind of influenced me a little bit on how I could find an idea. At the time when I was making the project, I was playing Star Wars, the game. So while I was playing, I was like, oh, those lighting scenarios are pretty cool. Even though it's a sci-fi game, there was some kind of a fantasy tone to it for some of the environments. So I did a bunch of screen grabs while playing. I don't think I used that many of them. It was more like it was there just for reference, really, just for an inspiration. And then past Frazetta and fantasy and all that, I was like, well, maybe I can try to find other references as well. So I wanted to find some stuff from the Lord of the Rings, which fits the universe. A bunch of reference also from the Unreal test that Unreal did for Unreal 5, right? The tech demo. So I gathered down on that board as well. A lot of the stuff from Hercules. I thought this maybe could help me. And then there's that latest cinematic from Blizzard, Diablo. That was, I think, this was actually fitting the theme pretty well. So I put that on the board as well, and it would be up 300 as well. And then some of the other works from some artists that I thought was inspiring and could fit the theme. So that's the reference board. That's all I work with, and I was either coming back to it sometimes I was just not really looking at it. It depends, right? All right. So after the reference, what I did was just redrawing boards. That's kind of what I was spending my time doing. So before we go into the storyboards, there's a little bit of a backstory. And this is what I came up with, because before doing the project, what I wanted to do was create a universe, right? So all we know right now, really, from the character is we have Frazetta and his character, the Death Dealer, but there's not much developed around it. There's the comic book that helps the other people develop stories about it in novels and all that. So I was thinking what I could do maybe was that there's a bunch of crazy fanatics that lives in a mountain somewhere, and they found the Death Dealer's lair, right? But he's not part of the human world anymore. And what they want is actually bring the Death Dealer back to the human world. So what they did is they captured a barbarian called Gath, and that's actually, this name really exists. They made it in a comic book. So they captured him, they drugged him, and they brought it to that abandoned cave that they have, that they found and where they live in, and where they do all their sacrifices or whatever. So that's where we're at right now before the story begins. And I'm going to show you the storyboards now.
If you don't mind me jumping in really quick, Olivier, sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to mention to our viewers that we are moderating the chat, and you can feel free to start typing in questions now for Olivier if you want. We'll devote time towards the end to address the questions from the chat, but if we have opportunity and there's some questions coming up that pertain to what Olivier is addressing right now, we might be able to bring a few through in the moment as well. So feel free to start interacting with the chat.
Oh, let's take a look at the boards then. So for the first shot, what I was thinking was those fanatics they come into their sacrifice chamber, if you can call it that way. And we have our hero right here, chained and imprisoned. Their leader in the middle, coming with the actual helmet of the Death Dealer. So they walk in towards the victim. Then they keep walking, and they were walking in the shadow. And as they keep moving, basically my hero is kind of overlit by the moonlight. So they keep walking, and then we start seeing them appearing in the moonlight. The leader comes in, gets closer to our hero who's on the altar of sacrifice, and he holds a helmet. Then a bunch of tentacles get out of the helmet, grabs our hero, just all the tentacles basically wraps around his arm, his chest. The evil of the helmet really tries to get a grasp on the victim because it knows already that it's ready. So I think his eyes starts to smoke, and grabs the victim, right? In this panel right here, he's getting choked completely. So he's in between the transformation and the human. So he's about to become the Death Dealer, but quite not yet. Some time has passed, and since they're in the Death Dealer's lair, he has all of his armor, his axe, all of his accessories. So they actually, make him wear the armor, his clothes, and all that, make him ready to be the Death Dealer again. So now he's fully the Death, right? Ready to go and slice people on the battlefield. But something that maybe they forgot is his name is Death, and he just decided to kill everybody in the room. Heads are being chopped off and blood everywhere. It's a bit gory. It's totally used for Halloween. Then he goes down the altar, see his horse, because the Death Dealer is nothing without his horse. They always goes together, hand in hand. He keeps walking toward his horse, crushing skulls, on the ground. Get on his horse and then runs until the exit. So the god of death and his beast are now reunited, and they both go on until they reach the exit. The end of the cave. They get out of the cave, and then there's the prancing horse going on, and then behind the two characters, there's there's the stormy weather, lightning, and then he just shows his axe, and that was the last frame that I did. So from there, those are basically the primary ideas. It's there was nothing, how can I say, really set in stones. I was just scribbling as much as I could, try to spring ideas, right? And then from there, I was like, well, the first thing I'm gonna do is let's just do the character, because he's the most iconic in this universe. So I was wanting to spend as much time as possible on the design of Death. And the first step that I did was I tried to do as many sketches as possible. Try to keep them really loose. My thought process here was kind of like going to look at my reference, then stop looking at my reference, and then start drawing and get a sense of my character, who he is and how he behaves, how he moves. I didn't spend too much time on it. I just tried to be as quick as possible. My goal here was really to kind of have some sort of an interview with my character, kind of try to get to know him, so I could create this persona, right? Then after spending enough time doing that, I think it was time for me to set certain things in stone, if I can say. There are certain things that I wanted with my character in his body template. So I wanted big thighs, because for me personally, I think big thighs are scary. And if I saw a dude with big thighs like that running after me, I think I'd be scared. So this is the actual template of my character that I would be using for the designs, right? I would use that as a base, and I would iterate on it. When I say iterating, so that's what I was doing. I started to do kind of what was close to Frazetta already designed and what the other artists, for example, from the comic book already did, right? So the chest piece, and then the clothes and the belt. Then I was thinking, okay, let's try another iteration. Let's put some other type of shoulder pads. Let's try something plated completely on his chest. Let's try different boots. Then I go on to another idea, and I started like the pads on the thighs, different plate on the chest. The helmet, I didn't want to change it. I want to try to stay as close as possible from the original helmet. Then I went on like that about several iterations. Sometimes I was just putting him without a shirt, just the robe. But I think I really didn't like this idea. I was thinking that it's probably too much. I don't think he'll be able to move that well with that. Then I put pants on. Then I put a longer cape, different type of shoulder pad, sorry. And after 10 or 15 drawings, I don't think I put all of them here. What I did was, okay, I think I have enough of them. And I took a little bit of everything that I liked, whether it was on this one was the shoulder pads, and then on this one, I think it was the chest piece. And certain things were becoming really repetitive. So I was thinking, okay, I think I kind of found my design. So what I did was get all the elements that I like from all the armors and put them into one. And this is the one I got right here. So I also did one version of him when he's human, because he was not death from the beginning. Him before becoming death, and him when he becomes death, right, with the armor. And then his skin color changes as well. So here, when he's alive, for example, his skin color is pink, because he has blood in it. And then when he's dead, it's pretty much like a dead body. So there's no more life into him. So that's him before death. That's him becoming death. And you see the seal of approval here. That's my wife. So after that, what I like to do is to go to ZBrush, and I actually use Daz for the Daz 3D for the character, for the base. So I would just load that as quick as possible, go into ZBrush, sculpt something really rough for the armor. Like you can see, it's nothing really detailed. I just want to try to establish something physical already from the get-go. And the reason why is because, well, the 2D sketch is enough for me here, I think. I had enough information. I just didn't want to keep doing it in 2D. I thought, just go into 3D and let's see what it's going to look like once we start building it, even in the concept process. That was the goal here, get the physicality of things, really. I wanted my character to be grounded as much as possible from the beginning. And from there, the other thing that I do is I take screen grabs and I draw over. And the draw over is there to fix another problem that I had here, which was really rough, not really defined, but the proportions are there, right? That's the proportions that I liked. And
Olivier, we've got a question from the chat about
Sure.
where you're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a curious question. They're wanting to know what, as you took like Frazetta's original design, and then you started to play around conceptually with the armor and the visual language, were there some other things that you looked at or armor studies that you did to kind of play with his original design?
There was a little bit. I think my goal was I wanted to try to stay as close as possible, but at the same time, take another spin on it. So I wanted to make it more entertainment, So I've tried to get ideas from the games that today's are popular. That's kind of what I try to do. And I did look at some other armors as well, and that's what I tried to mix in. And after that, what I kind of did was put everything aside and not look at it at all. So I like to do this. I like to look at stuff, right? I put it in my folder. I look at it. I draw, and I look at my reference. Then I put all my reference away, and I stop looking at it. And actually, I don't do anything for maybe a few days. I don't work on it at all. And then when I come back on it, I'm like, okay, so now that I just did everything. Everything is in my head. and I know unconsciously I'm influenced by it, right? So it's like you learn something by heart, and then when you know it, you just do it naturally. Then that's when I started to sketch this armor, right? And it just started came out. It came out from the reference, but I don't know exactly where. And then stuff kind of get mushy, where you have nightmares sometimes, and so stuff appears in your nightmares, right? And then I'm like, oh, that's a good idea, right? So I remember that, and the next day I get on my board, I'm like, oh man, that nightmare was amazing. So I put that back in. So that's kind of how it is. It's like a lot of some subconscious, right?
Yeah.
I digest as much as I can, and then I put it back on the paper without really knowing where it comes from. But I know it comes from somewhere, and it comes from the reference.
Yeah. Very cool.
Hopefully,
yeah, no, it sounds like it's like you're feeding your subconscious like vocabulary that it can use to then talk to you. One other question just at this point, and then I'll let you continue. As you're moving from 2D into 3D, someone was just asking, are there ever times do you always start with 2D sketches, or are there ever times you feel it's more appropriate just to start designing in 3D?
That's a great question. Not always. You'll see another of the character, one of the fanatics, I almost didn't do any 2D for it. So not always. Sometimes when the reason why I do 2D is because he's the main character, and I feel like I'm obligated to do research, right? I'm obligated to be like, okay, well, you can't just be lazy on this character because he's the main hero, and you got to produce a certain number of work and ideas in order for me to know that I actually explored everything I needed. So while I'm using 2D in that case because it's quick, right? It's like writing. So instead of me saying I'll put for example, this character's characteristic, armor, plate, no armor, then drawing is like writing those things down, right? And it's quick. So I know from right away, I'll be like, I don't like it. And the drawing took me maybe 30 seconds to a minute. But when I know what I want, for example, and that happened to me before, it happened to me on that project for the leaders of the Fanatics, where I knew exactly what I wanted. And I did a 2D drawing only for the presentation. But I knew what I wanted exactly for that character. And I was like, as soon as I'm done with the drawing, that's it. I'm not going to do anything else. And I didn't do any iteration or ideation or whatsoever.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Please continue. This is awesome so far.
Yeah, cool. So where was that? Yeah. So the goal here for me is to make my design evolve. By that I mean each steps of the design has a prompt, and each steps answering the questions or fixing a prompt. So here obviously it's a lot about, okay, let's get those ideas down, and right, I find the idea that I like. But this thing is just a drawing. Okay, then after that, what are we gonna do? Let's just put it into 3D. Put it into 3D, and like, okay, that's the 3D design. I got a good base, but it's kind of ugly. Okay, and there's some things I didn't like on it, like for example the thickness of the armor and stuff. But all right, so how do we fix that problem? Let's just go into 2D, and then on top of that, I will draw lines, and I'll take my time at that point, right? At that point, I won't do anything quick. I'm making conscious choices, and when I make a line, I make sure that line really means something for me, right? So what I want is to give as much information as possible right here, so I know what my character is going to look like in the end. The goal here is to make sure that a lot is communicated to the viewer, even though it's still 2D, and trust me, it'll look different once we start finishing the assets. But at least here, I'm building the blueprint, and it'll be easier for me to keep going after that. And that's what I ended up with, right? So I go back to this, right? And then I look at my drawing, then I keep sculpting on my rough mesh until I get this, basically. And when I get that, then I'll render. So I do have actually something to show. Let me pull up something really quick here. I'm going to show you actually how I made this in 3D fully. I use Daz for the body. The rest is sculpted, and then I use is simulation for the cloth. So what I wanted to show you guys was that how I do it. I have a few things in Daz. So if I go to my figures, I have a bunch of characters. And I think for this project, I used a few of them. I used one that was called this one because it had good textures on. And then the maps, the texture maps was already there. The UVs was already there. So I didn't have to do much work on it. And it's since it's a human character, though, it was pretty fast. And the good thing with Daz is that if you go to the shaping, you can actually shape your character. And I was like, all right, so you can see the different body types here, right? And I was like, okay, so he's a barbarian, he's nasty, it's gonna be Arnold. So if you bring this all the way up, I'm like, oh yeah, that's my bodybuilder. I mean, that's here I got my big thighs. Now I'm scared. So okay, so I got this, and then I would pose the character, right, until I get the pose that I want. And even what I did for this project, I bought, I think, a bunch of poses from the actual store. You do have a bunch of poses already in, and you can pose a character that way. Which is pretty good. So those are like for free. It comes in with Daz, and you can just use it, right? And I think I bought a bunch of poses too for particularly for this project. That's what I use for that. I'm gonna close this. And that's the pose I got, right? I think this pose was customized a little bit. I think I got a base, and then I kind of changed the arms, changed the hands and the head. I also designed the pose in that as well, based on whatever I wanted. Now what I'm going to show you is how I get that look in 3D. So I use Octane for my renders. And also, it's not really a demo of Octane. I mean, there's plenty of good demos out there, but just, as a quick little review, I have like my, the lighting. What I have here is an HDR. I think it's a studio HDR, so nothing fancy. And then I have a bunch of lights here. Not even that much. I think I'd only have it's a studio lighting, right? A top light just for the feel, and then a few rim lights just to show the characters. And I think I also have some lights for the eyes as well. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. So how I started is I'm going to start by rendering it. And here I have nothing. It's like an empty studio, right? My actor is not there yet. And I would usually import first the body. So I'm going to plug the body in here. And this is the body of my character without any textures. Since this is, I didn't do any of the design before he was death. So this is the death design. And I had to change his skin. In Daz 3D, he had human skin alive. And what I did for that is I got, I think, a pre-built shader inside of Octane, which is not really complicated. It's just a mixed material, and you can control the amount of how much you want to mix it. And the texture that I used Megascan textures, and they are, I think, the one from the dead cow skin. I think that's what I used. It was fitting perfectly what I wanted to do. So when I plug it in, now what do I have? I have my actor or my character with the actual skin that I wanted. I didn't even have to work it that much, really, to be honest. The texture itself kind of did the job. So I have my character in. He's in there. The second thing that I would do, I'm just going to load the armor. So the most important is his helmet, right? This is really iconic. So let's plug his helmet. And I would not plug the texture just yet, right? I would just put everything as a grayscale first to see what it looks like when it's shaded, if the shapes are good. I'm going to put the chest piece. Let's put the shoulder pads as well. I think I changed a few things on the shoulder pad. Originally on the design, I had 2 of them, I think, that was on top of each other. And I think it was too much. And that's why, I like to do a lot of 3D, because it tells me if it works or not for production, right? That's that kind of prompt that you want to know. And that's why I'm using 3D. So we don't have to guess it later on. So I guess that's enough for this. And after that, what I do is I have my material, which is almost the same actually as what I did for the skin, but instead I added more maps, like more breakups in the texture. I did roughness and then an albedo. It's really not a complicated one, really. It's just the basic roughness map, the diffuse, and then a bump or normal map. And that doesn't even take that much time either. So I would plug them in, and I would do my look depth that way with this lighting, because I wanted to keep things dark. It's really designed based on a certain type of lighting. I didn't do neutral lighting or anything. I just went right away for this the mood. So then I would plug it into the different pieces, and when I'm happy, then I stop here. I think it was good enough. And I remember, so at the time I was a bit I didn't really know what I wanted, so I did two armor design for the material. So I did another one that's a bit more like some kind of copper, or copper. It's more orangish, and I kind of like that too. So what I ended up doing is actually I kept both, and I just mixed them both. As you can see, I just mixed both armors. And then we have to make sure we don't forget evil eyes. So I would use the eyes as a source of light, and then I would just render that, right? Then I would add the cloth. Oops. So we have the cloth here. We also have the cloth actually. Let me render a bit more. That's hiding private parts. I do have the belt as well. The belt was very important because there was a skull on it. I'm a bit obsessed with the skulls as well, so let's plug that in so we have it. And then I would plug the cloth material in it. And I would wait. So when I use Obtain, I don't wait that long. I think for this I waited maybe 10 minutes. So, and that happened to me in production quite a lot as well. Even when I was doing my paintings, I would use this software, and I would just wait for it to render for 10 minutes, get a coffee, come back, and I'd be like, all right, that's good enough. Then I would stop it. I would save the images, and then I would start painting. So once I have that, I have my renders, I have my passes. So I have a few passes. I think I have like the environment, which is the sky dome, I think. But here we don't really have anything, so there's nothing. Sometimes I use the shadow pass. There's a Z depth as well for a bit of atmospheric perspective, and then I have the ID passes and the ambient occlusion. So once I have all that saved, I'm gonna stop this, and I'm gonna open Photoshop. Not that one. So this is the raw render. So my design has been figured out. Put some lighting, so there's shading on everything. There's materials. I'm happy with the stuff. There's the skin. Everything is in there. Put this full screen. At that point now, I'm like, okay, so when we're here now, we need to enhance that, right? We have a design, but it's not really there yet. So I would go in and I would try to make the image more contrasty. So I add more gray layers, more adjustments, right? Here, actually, I put more curves here. So I try to make the background. The background was too light, so I tried to create some kind of contrast. After that, I would go and use my ambient occlusion to try to give it a bit more of a realistic feel to it. And then I would paint over. So sometimes I paint the lighting a little bit. I'll repaint it. It depends if I'm happy with it or not. Sometimes it needs a bit of touch up. The fur, for example, I didn't want to spend too much time in 3D because fur is time consuming and I don't think it would be a good idea. I just thought, okay, I'm just going to paint it. So I painted the cloth by hand on top of the 3D. Try to make it less stiff, because 3D is great and all, but sometimes it's really really not pleasant, even if you get a nice render, right? It's like it's really stiff. It's not really warm. It's not really welcoming when you look at it. So what I try to do here is to kill as much of that as I can, and even I lost a lot of definition in the body. Even from Daz, there's a you can see his abs and stuff, and it's like really well defined. But then in this lighting condition, it didn't work that well, so I just had to go back on it. I went to look for bodybuilders' pictures, and then I was just using them as an overlay, as a texture, basically, on top of my render. And then I would paint the hair as well. And I think I also made this a little bit darker because I tried to respect as well the character. I mean, this side of his helmet, this part of his helmet is pretty dark pretty much all the time. So that's for the paint over. And then I would add a bit of effects, a bit of smoke, because, why not? A bit of particle dust, and a little bit of, perspective atmospheric. So a bit of atmosphere to give a bit of depth to the image. And then I have here my ideas. So I would isolate each part, and I would paint them out or paint them in, whatever I need to be done. And then from there, I think what I do is I go back and I try to blend the edges a bit better. I don't know if you can see here, maybe not everywhere, but I try to break up that 3D look that's on the edges. I think maybe on the shoes would be better. Yeah, like here, for example, I try to get rid of that. It's yeah. So if you see now you see the smooshies, and here is crisp. It's kind of not blending, not pretty. So I try to do that. So if you compare the image of that's before the paint over, and that's after everything's been 3D'd, and try to make the render look better, basically. All right, let's see. I know if I didn't forget anything. All right, let's move on. So what I was talking about earlier, right? That question that person was asking, if I sometimes go into 3D. For this character, I knew exactly what I wanted, and I had the choice of not drawing anything. I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted a skull for a mask. I think I wanted to put some long hair originally, and then I was thinking, maybe if they're just shaved and just covered of tattoos, that'll do it. They'll look crazy. And then a little piece of cloth here, and then maybe cat skulls, because since they're crazy, maybe they collect cat skulls or whatever, and then they don't cut their nails or whatever. Try to make them look kind of nasty. So that's what I had in mind. But for this project, I was like, well, I have time and I like to draw, so I did a drawing, and I only did this one. That's the only one I did, right? But technically, I didn't have to do it. What I could do for that is exactly what I did for the other character, is to go directly into 3D, and that's what I ended up with. Really, it's the same thing. So I sculpted the little skirt in ZBrush, and then I think these is probably I think it's Kid Bash from somewhere, and I sculpted the mask in ZBrush, and then I went on the internet and I was just looking for tattoo pattern and whatever drawings or that I could find, and I created the texture separately. So I created, for example, a different normal map, so I could get those little bumps, because if you look at people that are tattooed, it's kind of a bit elevated, right? It's not completely flat. So I wanted to give it a bit of life. So this character was really fast. I had the idea, and I was like, that's what I want to go for, and I just went for it, and it was done. It was done in like a day or something. All right, environment design. So it's cool to have characters and all, but they need to live somewhere, right? They need to, that's where they live, that's where they do their sacrifices, and that's what I'm gonna show you now. This was my first sketch, and for that, I did do a lot more drawing, because I was not really sure. And to go back to that questions, I was not sure what I wanted to do, so I was like, the best thing to do is just, start drawing, get references, get images, and I started to just do a front view of my first initial idea. The first thing I was thinking of was maybe it would be a temple, and what I wanted to do was this door would open, and then our hero, the death dealer, before he becomes it, would sit here, for example. This door would open, and then the fanatics would come from behind, and there would be smoke and stuff. And I'd be, oh, that'd be cool. So there's like skeletons on the floor, and then there's candles, and I'd be like, oh, that's just pretty cool. So I kept that. I was happy with it. Then I was thinking, all right, maybe I can push it a bit further. How about I put sculptures everywhere, right? So I put ladies, boys, demons, and then more ladies on the wall. And I was like, okay, maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe I'm losing myself here, right? But it was still in the conception. It was still in sketching. I was still exploring ideas. So I was like, it's okay if I go crazy for a day, right? It doesn't matter. I can always pull back on it. So I had fun with it, and I was like, it's not gonna work because there's too many human figures. If I put more human figures in the set, it's not gonna work. So I pulled back a little bit, and I was like, maybe I can just keep 2 statues. Maybe I can only put 2 statues on each side, right? So I think it was here and here. I was like, okay, maybe I can just keep those ones. So I was like, all right, I have time anyways. It's my project. There's no deadlines or anything. So I was like, I'm just gonna do more stuff because I want to have fun. So I did a bunch of iterations of the statues. I think maybe this could be wood. This could be maybe melted metal. I want to do something maybe a bit more fleshy would be nice. Something with horns as well would be cool. Some kind of weird prints with a hole in the middle, eyes in the knees. I just kind of went crazy. I didn't really, for the statues, I didn't have any goals or anything. I was like, I just want to go evil crazy. So, and then I think I ended up with this, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's cool. I guess a skull on flame and holding a stick. I guess he's guarding the temple or whatever. It's kind of, it could be that, right? So I was like, okay, let's just do the sketch rendered. So I rendered something. I built something into it really quick. Got a bunch of skeletons from my library, build candles, and then build the statues, very rough as well. Build a gate. And I was like thinking, well, I don't think it's quite working. I don't know if I really like it. It didn't look really good. My wife was like, no, maybe you shouldn't pick that. It's not a good idea. So I was like, all right, let's not do it. And then what happened was like, okay, I have to go for a new idea, right? And I was thinking, okay, maybe I could learn Unreal as well in the process. So it didn't take me that long really. And it's very basic. I'm not an Unreal expert or anything, but I was like, okay, I just want to have a set that I could put together really quick. And I want to just be able to put some lighting really quick and then just go in it, right? And start scouting. That's kind of what I wanted to do. So what I did was I downloaded a bunch of assets from Megascan. The altars from Megascan, the statue, probably, if you guys are familiar with Megascan, you probably have seen that before. And I also went on the Unreal Marketplace and I downloaded a bunch of game assets just to populate the scene, right? I was like, let's just get as much as possible and be creative. That's what I did. And so, oops, not this. So I'm gonna fire up Unreal really quick, just to show you a little bit of kind of how I did it. Really, what I wanted to do here was, like I said earlier, was let's say if I have a client or I want to see the set and I want to just walk in and I want to be like, okay, I'd like to set up my own cameras by myself. Maybe there are things that some areas of the set that I don't know, that I haven't thought about, that maybe it's cool, right? Maybe some angles would be nice to explore. So this is kind of what I ended up with in Unreal. So I was like, all right, now it's time to play. And I did use Unreal when I was at Microsoft. So it was, I didn't use it that much, and I actually forgot everything about it because a year later I was like, oh, let's pick up Unreal. And I didn't remember anything at all. So I picked that up again. Didn't take much time really. And I was like, all right, so let's just walk in. right? So I was just in with the view and setting up cameras. I was like, let's take that angle. Maybe it's not, but maybe a bit lower. And then I would create a camera based on that. Then I would be like, okay, let's just move the camera right here. And maybe he could be killing them from this angle, right? All right, I set up the camera. And then I would be like, let's go on that ledge. Let's go. Maybe there's a prisoner in the cage here, and he's looking at the scene, right? And then I would create a camera from here. So, and from there, more ideas will be coming up, and it will be feeding my storyboard as well. That's kind of how I was doing it. And my scene, really, I'm going to pull it up really here. It's nothing crazy, really. There's just all the stuff that I imported, you know, the architecture stuff, the walls, and all I have for lighting is the light source, the sky dome, and then the skylight, really. And then I also have some fogs. That's about it. It didn't take me that long to set that up. I just wanted to play with it, and it actually helped me to find new ideas for where I could bring this world to, right? So that was the whole point of using Unreal. But now from here, what I was thinking was, okay, I scouted my shots. It was cool and all, but there's a few limitations that I hit. And I was like, okay, so what I can do now is let's go back to Octane, because that's something that I know, and I can just now go for design and do it. So I imported everything back. It gets a bit technical at some point, and put everything back into Octane and got my cameras. And I was all right, this is my first shot, and I'm going to use this shot for my environment design. What I do is I render something at a very low res, and it's like a thumbnail, right? And from there, I would paint over, and I would just focus on the lighting, right? So there's only the moonlight shining here. I think for this concept, I didn't have a moonlight yet. It was just sunlight. And then I would try to group my values, you know. So apply the art foundation, my basic art foundation. Try to direct the eye of where I want people to look at. So he's a prisoner on the altar. And then there's like the kind of mysterious, you know, atmosphere with a bit angelic as well, because there's the god right here, and then there's the steam, and then the statues like I had in the Unreal had some fires. They're lighting up the scene, so maybe we can get something cool with that. So that's what I did for the thumbnail. And then I would just go back in and load all these textures. Maybe, you know, put some kick lights, some rim lights here and there. Work out all of the elements like the smoke and fog and all that. I would paint all that over. So I'm not going to show it for this, but I have for the keys, I have the same shot that I kept, and I'm going to show my progression of how I build the lighting from the 3D and then the paint over and finishing the image from there. And so if you remember earlier, we had those assets from, I don't remember, I think it's a game called Infinity Blade, I think, from Epic. And so I picked them because I really love the design. It was really cool. I like them a lot. But I was thinking, okay, since I'm creating a full universe and I have time, well, maybe I can redesign those statues and make them more like it would fit this universe in the cave. So there were metal pieces, I think, here and there. And I was like, maybe I should just redesign it. So I went in back into 3D. So I went into ZBrush and I redesigned them without drawing this time. So it's funny because drawing took actually more time earlier to do the designs, and I didn't go anywhere because I didn't know what I wanted. But here I was like, oh, okay, I kind of know already what I want to redo on this. And I went into ZBrush, we sculpted it. It didn't take that much time. Then I think what I did was just remeshed everything and then created automatic UVs and then started to paint over. And I was like, oh, maybe I can have some fun with it. Put some spider webs here and there, you know, dirt, sand built up, the flame. And the next image is actually the raw render of the render and also the sculpt. So out of ZBrush, when I sculpted, it looks like that. And then I apply a procedural material. which really is not almost not much building really. The map is just a tileable texture, and that's about it. So this is the raw image out of the render. So all I did really was to add 2 rim lights, and then the flame here that emulates the lights here that emulates the flame, and then I also throw in my character, which is our hero, as a scale reference. So this is a raw render. This is the final image with the mood, and then the actual little, grittiness, and then what would make the concept a bit more alive and more believable. Like it has some kind of story, right? It's been there for ages. There are spiders that's living on it now, and try to build some kind of storytelling with it. And so when all that is kind of in my mind, I'm like, okay, I have the characters, I have the environments, I have the elements of the design. So I know what my world is made of. I have each element of the world already in my hands. Now, how can I push it a bit further and kind of show that, oh, what if we actually make a cinematic out of it? What if we would make the actual movie? What if we would make a short pitch, right, to show to producers or whatever? I just thought it could be a good idea to make a few keyframes based on the storyboard that I made. So I would go back into Octane, because remember my set is actually built already, right? I already put it all together in Unreal. So all I had to do is to export all that. Then what I did was just like, okay, let's just add a few more elements. So I redesigned the statue, so they're in there. And then I put the skulls, and that was from my original ideas. And I was like, okay, I want skulls on the ground. I didn't put any candles. That was too much. And since the set is already built, all I had to do was like, okay, I have my storyboard, so I have images that I can lean on. So I put my cameras everywhere in the set, and kind of readjust the lighting per shots. And I did a set of thumbnails, like you see right here, based on these images. They're not necessarily in order, but I picked the images that I think would sell it better for this little pitch. So this is what I have, like the same thing that I did for the environments. I would render in black and white and work the composition, work the lighting, making sure I direct the eyes wherever I want to direct it, and whatever feeling I want people to feel when they look at the image. And this is the first keyframe when those fanatics they get in, and then they go towards the altar where our hero is being kept prisoner. He's holding the helmet because he's gonna actually perform the sacrifice on our hero. And here, remember guys, when I was talking about every step is improving, the designs from what I've done before. So every time I do a new image, even if it's actually almost similar to the first design, I was thinking, okay, let's try to improve that. Let's try to enhance the first image that I had, which was just the environment design. And here there's a bit more storytelling, right? I was like, what we had before was just the environment. Here it's more about something is about to happen. So maybe we can kind of put things in it that can indicate that, well, something bad is going to happen, or it's not a good place to be, right? So I put a bunch of ravens, and I was like, they're all circulating around him. And we all know, obviously, when a bunch of birds are circulating around you, it's probably not good. So I was like, maybe that could be a good idea. And for this image, I do have a breakdown. So here we go. So first, this is what I get actually out of Octane. This is the actual raw render, right? It's it doesn't seem to be saying that much, but when I actually add my Z depth and I use that as a fog pass, then I can create more depth. So that's the second part of how I build the image. Then I would start painting on it a bit more. So if I go back and forth, you probably can see, so there's the birds, of course, the birds are there. But then if you look at some parts of the paintings are actually changed a little bit. There's a bit more texture on it. The edges are a bit more different because I want to break that 3D look, right? It's a bit stiff, it's a bit cold. I'm trying to break that up here. And also I strategically choose where I want that, I've spent more time painting this, right, than, for example, painting those cages in the background. And even the statues, I actually didn't paint that much on it. I did a texture, and it did the job, and it was enough for what it was. Then I would add the so-called effects, I would say. I would paint the flames and fumes that are in the background to create more depth. So really, I wanted to have more depth to the image. So I tried to create as much layers as I could by separating, those cages with more fumes in between. And then I would grade it and change the a bit of the lighting as well. More, I try to add a bit more contrast. And there's a big changes, of course. There's a big shift from this is being a bit greenish and yellow, and this is kind of blue and orange. And that's what I was going for, right? I was trying to go for this kind of tone. And then I would just, finishing up a little bit, clean up more edges, try to get rid of that 3D look because it's too stiff. It could be unpleasant sometimes. Those are not robots. They're no hard surface, robot. The hard surface organic. So I wanted to keep them organic. And then I would add, to make it more believable and realistic, I would add some lens dirt on, right? So just go on the internet, or I think I had a bunch of images in my hard drive that would, and I would apply them as an overlay, I think. And I would get that, the lens dirt. It's like the camera would get dirty, right? Here's the second image. Process is the same. The only thing I have to do really is to make sure there's continuity between the images. So I try to make sure that the lighting is fairly the same, but of course it doesn't always work. So I have to change it. And I have to, for example, add, I did here a stronger rim lights or backlight, sorry, for the flames, to pretend that there's actually a flame lighting the character from the back. I actually reframed that a little bit more to make it more interesting. And for this one, the lighting is starting to change. What I kind of wanted to do was, from the time that they come into the chamber and they actually getting close to the actual sacrifice, then there's a shift in lighting. So the lighting right now is starting to change a little bit, and I'm trying to create a sense of contrast. So I'm trying to make sure that everything around it is darker, and they're the only source of focus, right? And for this, I took a bit more liberties. For example, the hero here is heavily painted on, for example. So I did use 3D as a base, but these characters, the leader of the fanatic, I didn't paint that much on. Sorry, you probably can see this is heavily 3D. There's a bit of painting on the skirt, but on the character, there's a little more painting, and I'm going to show you that on the next slide. So this is the raw render, and I don't know why, somehow my asset broke, and I couldn't get the full texture back somehow, and it even had like a farmer stand, and I didn't even know where this came from. And I was like, what's going on here, really? And I couldn't get it back somehow. So I was thinking, well, whatever, I'm just going to work with it. So I kept that, and I just painted everything on it. But it actually, in the end, it actually helped me because I could get this value here, it's just coming black out of the render, and I could use that for the hair. So I used the same type of value, and I painted a bit more. I did a bit more pictures on it, rim lights, hand painted. A little bit on the fanatic as well, the leader, trying to enhance the image. And it's the same process: lens dirt, texture, lighting, paint over. It is the same as what you saw from the first keyframe. Now this keyframe was, I think it's one of my favorite. I think if you remember from the storyboard, what I had was, he was the helmet is getting the tentacles on the character, and originally I didn't have that. So when I was drawing the boards originally, I didn't have any of this, and it was enough. But then when I came to this image and I was doing my thumbnail, this is what I had, right? And I was thinking, okay, there's something missing. there's something that I quite don't like. The lighting, I didn't really like it either. So I was not really happy with it. And I was thinking, okay, let's just rework the lighting a little bit more. So I reworked the lighting. I actually changed completely. So from those frames and this and that, now I'm like, okay, he's becoming death. The lighting needs to change, right? So I was like, okay, let's make something more dramatic, more contrasty, more rim light, some like he's getting attacked. And I was like, but so something's missing. And I was thinking, what if? And I remember in the comic book, he becomes the death dealer by getting strangled by the tentacles that comes out of it. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I can create some kind of a pattern, right? Maybe I can create shapes that could indicate that he's getting strongly attacked. So I put those lines, that all basically direct the eye to where you're supposed to look at his helmet and his eyes. And his eyes are they're fuming already. So you can see he's becoming death, right? It's there. He's dying right now. But at the same time, he's going to be reborn as death. So he's half actually alive, half dead. So if you look at his skin here, is what I want to do is to make it purple, and then the other half of his body is still pinkish, right? And so I did that. I was like, okay, I think the idea will work. So I kept pushing my idea. I was like, okay, let's just draw a bit more on it. I was thinking, what if the tentacles are just, just grabbing his arms, maybe wrapping around his chest, grabbing other parts of the set as well to maintain him in place. So I was thinking, okay, that's a good idea. I kind of like that. And I was thinking, okay, since I missed drawing a little bit, and I have a comic book background, I was like, okay, let's just do a drawing, like a final frame, fully drawn, comic book style, because I have time. It's my project. I don't care. I do whatever I want. So I just spent some time doing this, just like kind of like a inky comic book style. I was like, okay, I think that's cool. Like we could put that in. It could be in the pitch. Maybe people will like it, maybe not. But I had fun with it, so it was pretty good. And what I realized by doing this is, okay, I want to have fun doing it. So by doing that, the more I was spending time on this drawing, the more ideas were coming up. So I was thinking, okay, so let's say he's getting strangled, and then those tentacles are pretty harsh. They're not nice, right? When they start wrapping up around your arms and your chest, and maybe he could start bleeding a little bit, right? It gets a bit gory, but I toned it down a bit in the final. So I was like, that's what happened when I was doing with these drawings. Maybe it could we could have some splashes here and there. So by working on it, by doing kind of whatever I wanted, a lot of more ideas was coming up, and I was really happy about that. And this is what the final came up to be. And you can see the blood here a little bit. So I didn't do anything that would be dripping or anything. I just put smears. And I do have actually the breakdown for this file right here, how I build that up. So let's take a look at it. So it's a bit similar to what I had on the other images, but I think there are a few more steps in it, and I thought it would be worth showing it. So this is what I have out of Octane when I render it. This is the raw render. Then I actually rendered 2 times, one with the dead skin, one with the skin when he's alive. And I started to mix both of them. Then I did my ambient occlusion again. And for this one, I also rendered, since there's more metal, I think I did the same for the other PCs that have the other keyframes that have metals on. I rendered a specular pass, because I wanted that specularity of the material to pop a bit more. So I rendered that. Then I went on to paint the skin texture, since he's getting, strangled, and it's not really pleasant, and his skin is actually reacting to that, right? So I was like, okay, let's just put some veins in there, just to make it look like he's aggressive on the skin, and there's a result into that. Then after this, I do a bit of grading, and then it changes the image quite a lot. The background gets darker. I want to create more contrast, that's why I did it for. And then there's the atmosphere. Here is it's not that much, but still, I wanted to add a bit of that, effect in the image. And then that's when the fun begins. So my image here is in a good spot, and all it is just polishing and having fun with little details that, whether I want to keep it or not. So I put a bit more light in the background to make it more magical, with the tones of the colors as well. I added actually more ambient occlusion, so I hand painted those to give a bit more depth. I think I didn't like the fact that the lighting was kind of mushing this part a little bit more, so I didn't want that. I'll try to create a bit more contrast, so we focus more on the helmet. And then I painted the eyes that are actually burning and flaming. And then I did the blood on the body. And then I did another textures on the middle, because it was a bit, even though you can see it is beat up. I mean, it's from the sculpt, but I was like, okay, let's just put another layer on it, just to look less cold. And then I painted the hair on top of it. And I think what I do is I like to color shadows as well. It's very subtle. Maybe you don't see it that much, but it just gives it a bit of something else at the end. It's just me nudging, nitpicking my own work in a way. And then I add the lens flare. Oh, not the lens flare, the lens effects, the lens dirt. This is the fourth key. And then after this, what happens is he becomes death. And like we saw in the storyboard, I was like, well, no one escape it, and you're going to be up to it too. So I try to make something more graphic for this one. I think I'll use a long lens for this. And I did a bird here. I was like, he's just witnessing what's happening. And in terms of lighting, I think kept it really dim. I wanted something a bit more scary, higher contrast. I did a bit of blood on the axe, because that's also part of the character. Yeah, and that's it. I think that's it. All the keys are there. All right, questions?
Wow, that was really, really cool. Thank you so much for unpacking your process like that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we've got actually several questions we can address.
Yeah.
And that last key, that more graphical key that you did of him like getting ready to deal the death blow.
Yeah.
That felt so Frazetta. Like
that's what I try to do.
Yeah, I think if Frank was working with 3D, he'd probably go in that direction. That was really awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So some of the questions have been coming up. Earlier in the process, when you were grabbing your base, mesh from Mixamo and setting up your poses and stuff, I was actually curious. Have you ever used Mixamo animations to get your poses as well?
No,
with those base meshes.
I've never used it. I've seen it. I've watched tutorials on how to do it. I've never tried it, but it's on my list. I do want to try it. It looks great. It's a great tool. I think you could just put your character in there, and then you can make them dance. You can make them walk, and it's good. I think it's a good tool to have. I've never done it, but it's on my list. I do want to try.
Yeah, and that's such a cool step to just grab a Daz 3D base and work up the muscles from there and stuff. It's great.
It does help. Yeah.
Someone wanted to know, just as you're kind of walking, like the way you did, like the scouting out the different camera angles and stuff in Unreal. They were just asking, do you take a filmmaker's approach? Are you thinking like a filmmaker when you're trying to set up these shots?
Yes, I do. I keep the lenses close to my brain, if I can say. So when I walk in the set, I'll be like, okay, making sure that. For example, this shot, for example, I use a longer lens, right? I think it's a 50 or 70 millimeter, I think, and I'm pretty far from the set. So I'm thinking, okay, what do I want to put on the screen? What I would like people to feel, or what I would like to feel about it. So I was like, well, that's a scary scene. I don't want to be near those people. because I'll be slides too. So I was thinking, okay, so what I can do is I can put the camera really far, and then if you put the camera really far, then what happens is you don't see anything anymore, right? Because it's too far. So then I was like, if I put a 50 millimeter on it, then I see better. And what if I put a 70 millimeter? Then I see better. And that's why I ended up with this. And then what happens as well is this 70 millimeter lens created a graphic image at the same time. So yes, when I get into the scene, I'm like, okay, I'm just thinking how a DP would think, right? For example, I would get into the set and be like, okay, I'm pretty not working my camera, and I try to frame things, and then I try to arrange the lighting, you know, based on the angles, and yeah, that's kind of how I'm trying to do it.
Yeah, and I love the image compression you're getting with that longer focal length. You know, with the dramatic lighting, it all just stacks up really nicely on top of each other. Yeah, and it's amazing with just a little bit of time spent, even doing some digital photography with focal length that you could control. It's amazing how that starts to get your brain to think in the right way.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. I think it's right now, for especially with the COVID, you can't really. I mean, you can go out, but it's like, you know, it's not like you can just go anywhere and easily take pictures. So what you can do is you can go to Blender, build a city, right? You could instance geometry. It's really easy. It's really fast. What you can do, and it's just like, okay, well, we can try different lenses on it, and then you can do it that way too. It's a great tool for that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. We had another question just come in. Do you think someone more comfortable in 3D can get into concept as long as they're learning 2D as well?
Yeah, I think it doesn't hurt to know about 2D. You know, if you don't know, I don't think it's a handicap either. I think you can still do concept art if you just do 3D. Look at Vitaly, for example, Bulgarov. He's full 3D, and he's totally fine. I mean, he's doing amazing work. So I think if you know your basics, you know, your art foundation, it doesn't matter. It's just a tool, right? The brand of your pencil is not going to make you a great artist, right? So if you know your art basic, if you know your composition, if you know your lighting, if you know how to make a compelling image, if you know your composition rules, if you know how to put your colors together, and if you know how to communicate with your image, whether you use 3D or you use 2D, it doesn't really matter. But I think, you know, using 2D is, if you want to draw something quick and you want to show someone to communicate an idea, that would be helpful, right? In those instances. Yeah.
Totally. Well, yeah, and I remember like when I first started getting into Daz 3D and grabbing those space meshes and even downloading the stock poses, at least for me, I quickly realized where I needed to increase my knowledge of anatomy. It's like Daz just doesn't do that for you, because sometimes those poses will break the anatomy.
Yeah.
And you need to see where, so you can't, there's no way to like sidestep the fundamentals. But I think people that take the time learning those things and use 3D, like what you can do with that is, well, obviously you're doing it and we're seeing it tonight. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, totally. No, I think, you know, even if you use, like I was showing Daz, but there, like you said, even here, for example, when I posed this character, it was completely broken. Some of the things were broken. And I've learned anatomy for a few years when I was in art school, and those things came back, you know. So you could sculpt that, but you still need to know the knowledge, the foundation, you know, the base. That's what I mean. You still need to know where goes what, you know, what goes where. Like your muscle, the bones are structured a certain way for a certain function, and then the muscles are laid on top of it. And that is not dependent on the tool that you use. It's just your knowledge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've had a few different questions, and one including for myself, that are all kind of pointing towards the same thing. So I'm going to kind of sum it up and kind of catch all these questions at once. All right. So you're doing work in ZBrush, you're doing some stuff that has the potential to generate some higher poly counts and stuff like that. And then we see you rendering, even working in Unreal Engine. Talk to us a little bit about optimization for rendering. Are you finding that you're needing to like unwrap in, you know, UV and that kind of stuff? What's your process like with regards to addressing that?
So optimization, yes, that's really important. It's really, really important. I'll start by talking about Unreal. Even if it's real time, it doesn't mean you can just put whatever you want in it. And I realized that really quick, even though I know it. I mean, I'm doing production work every day, and I know I have to optimize my geometry and stuff like that. And then when I started to use Unreal, I forgot about this, and I was like, oh yeah, I can put this, I can put that. And I realized that, oh, actually, you have to be careful what you put in, right? And something that I was being careful about is when you download your assets, for example, from Megascan, that's just one of the example, right? I download the lowest resolution of the geometry, right? So LOD 0, that's what I get. And then I get a 4K texture. Lower than that is a bit, maybe it's a bit too low if you want to have maybe better quality renders. So yeah, at some point, if your computer can take it, yeah, it's not going to render well. And then it'll take too much time to render, right? So I would try to make sure that my geometry is as light as possible. My textures, I don't have 8K textures. And then some of the times that happened to me where I would render something and it would have 8K textures and I wouldn't even know about it because I just loaded it like an idiot. And I was like, I'm just going to put as much as I can. It doesn't matter. It renders. But then it just renders and it takes longer. So it's actually not optimized. So I try to be aware of that. And then going into ZBrush, when I sculpt the armor, for example, I would use the Dynamesh, and I wouldn't really care about. I don't really at that point when I sculpt for concept for ideation and try to hit the look that I want. Then I would not really worry about it. I don't worry about the poly count or anything. But when I'm done with it, and I have this result, and it's pretty high, then I would remesh it. And then after remeshing it, I would reproject everything. So I would prepare the geometry. Yes, I would do that still. That's where this is not just a concept now. It's more like, okay, use that production knowledge that I have and make sure that I can use that so I can render something. Then I would do automatic UVs. And then when I export that, so either I export a low geometry that has good topology, or I would decimate the whole thing, right? And I would decimate as low as possible, and to make sure it keeps its shape as much as possible. That's kind of my motto. It's like decimate it as much as you can until it becomes like very low, has a very low poly count, and I have to make sure that I have to compare it with the original sculpt, because sometimes it's too much, and when it's too much and then it doesn't look good, then I don't really want to use that, right?
Yeah, totally. I'm so thankful the way that you're addressing that and the process you're talking about, because I think even aside from people using 3D for concept, you even hear the questions come up in production like, man, do I have to UV unwrap? Are there shortcuts around that and that sort of thing? But there was a time when concept designers, everything was going digital, and they were going like, do we have to learn Photoshop?
Yeah.
So it's like Josh Herman said something I love. It's just like, it's just part of making something, like just do what you got to do and be creative with it.
Totally. And I think I would add something else on that too, is that it all depends what gets the job faster done and better too, right? So don't get me wrong, I don't always do UVs either, and I don't always put textures on things, right? Sometimes if I don't have to put textures and I can just slap a photo on it, even if it's a grayscale model, I'll do it. It all depends really. But if you have the mean to do it, if you can just do it, take that extra step, and you can always have. I think if you do it, you always have that little flexibility, because you can always turn around the asset.
Totally. Yeah, and ZBrush has got great tools for that too.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you're not trying to make it absolutely production perfect. So the way that you address that, I think, segues really well into another question that came up. And it was essentially, let's see here. At what point do you know when to make the decision that you have enough 3D information, and then make the move from, your 3D rendering and all that into Photoshop for kind of post-processing? How do you find that balancing act?
It depends on what I have to do. It depends on the subject. If I have to do a landscape and I don't have much time to do it, then I would use more images, I think, or more painting at that point, because it'll get the job done faster, right? I would maybe still use probably basic geometry to lay out things, but I think a lot of it passed what's really close to the camera would not use 3D. Past what's really close to the camera, I would just paint that, right? What's close to the camera, I'll use 3D, obviously. It also depends on the style. If it's more stylized, like I've done projects where it's ultra stylized and you can use 3D, but you know, when you need to heat it, well, you need to imitate the painting style. So there's probably more painting, right? And also for me, the main asset, like that, for example, I would try to push it as much as possible, right? I try to push that as much as possible. Also, I don't want to do work that I don't need to do. And if I find assets that already exist, like Megascan, for example, it's great, right? I just have to import them and that's it. I don't have to build it. I don't have to spend too much time on it. And I can just render it really quick. So it's a mixture of all of that. It's a mixture of, do I have to build it or I don't have to build it? You know, is it easier to do with an image or a paint over? You know, there's no like right, there's not only one answer for it, there's a lot of answers for it. It depends on what strategy you want to go for that will make you more efficient at doing the work.
Absolutely. Okay, so another question that relates to that just came in. And I mean, there are a lot of opinions out there about this. And, you know, you and I were even chatting about this before the stream. I mean, the person said, you're obviously very competent in 2D and painting and things like that. Why, what factors played into your decision to start doing 3D, and why use 3D in your workflow?
Well, I think, especially when you work in production, 2D is great to start. It depends on also the style that you're doing, but when you do 3D, I found that it works better for the rest of the production, right? I had some examples that we were talking about earlier. On Black Panther, for example, I had a shot where we needed to do concept for it, and it was a top-down view. And what I did was, okay, I built quick geometry and I painted on it and I projected all that on top of the geometry, and it was the concept, right? So I rendered that for them. And then what we ended up doing was that, okay, so now you guys take those assets and then use them in production as well to render the same thing. So the advantage of doing 3D, I think, for me, is that everything that I do in 3D can be passed on later on to production, right?
Yeah.
They can use all that again. They can work from that. And then the big thing for me using 3D, and then that's what I was showing when I was showing the rough sculpt, is that you get right into, okay, this is the physicality of things that, you know, unfortunately in 2D it's abstract, right? There's a lot of way to interpret it, but if you have a 3D assets, well, it's the 3D assets. You know, you don't interpret it in any ways. Another thing is the scale. For example, if for example we have a large scene and they have tall buildings or tall mountains, right? What you can do in 3D is you can measure all that, and you can give more informations, right? You can show them that this is your character that you design and you mold in my concept is that big compared to that mountain. So basically you eliminate all the guesses, right?
Yeah.
No guesses for production, and it's straightforward. Okay, we know what it looks like, we know where it stands in a set, and then that's it. It's shipped. It's done. We don't talk about it.
I got to believe your production designer loves you for that, right? Anything that's going to have to be built into a physical set.
It does help. It does help. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, and these are all fantastic tools as well.
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's see. We still have got more questions because you kicked up a lot of questions along the way.
Great. Keep it coming. I'm here for that.
Okay, so one of the things I was actually thinking of while I was watching you, and this is sort of a internal debate that I had recently. Why not, or do you use KeyShot because you can kind of go straight from ZBrush into KeyShot, not think about optimization. You know, I've got my own debate as to when I might want to use that and not use it, but what are your thoughts?
That's a good question. That's funny because I used to use KeyShot before. I used it and I love the tool. I think it's a great tool. But I think what happened to me is I'm doing a lot more environment design. and I need accurate physical lighting, right?
Mhm.
That's why I was like, well, unless I do a prop or maybe mechanical stuff, I was thinking it's probably better I learn other things as well. And Octane came in the game, and I was like, well, there's sun and sky tool is just amazing. It's almost accurate, right? That's my take on it. It's like, well, I didn't have to use it because I had to use it for something else.
Yeah.
I had to do more environments, so I had to use accurate lighting for, and it needs to be quick, right? So I need to make sure that when I click on sun, the sun is right there and it looks good already. That's
yeah,
what,
absolutely. Yeah. No, I think Octane or Keyshot does really cool beauty renders, but as soon as you got to expand and work with sets and stuff. And actually, I mean, for anybody out there who's like, yeah, but that's like even more money to invest. For anybody out there who's using Blender, I actually just recently discovered they have a build of Blender that comes with Octane for free.
Yeah, I do have it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So definitely worth checking out.
Yeah.
Let's see here. More questions. Okay, so you were talking about using Unreal, and granted, you had used it some in your past, but you kind of had to relearn it for the aspects you're talking about here. I'm curious, for someone like myself or others out there who are doing, kind of setting up 3D scenes for illustration, for key shots, but we're looking at Unreal going, maybe I should start learning that as well. What was the learning curve like for you? Like, how long did it take to kind of learn what you at least needed to do for what you're showing us here?
I'll be honest, it didn't take long. It didn't take long. Going back on it, all I had to do was to spend maybe a day, not even a day, half a day watching tutorials. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and they have it on their website. That's all I did. I just went on their website. I was like, I downloaded Unreal, and I was like, okay, the basics are just moving these. That's how you move, and it's very intuitive. It's like playing games. So if you play FPS, it's pretty intuitive already. So that's already something it was easy for me. And then after that, I was like, I know what I want also, right? I need real lighting. I need physical lights, which is already there, and then I just need to import my assets, and I need to create cameras. So for me, it was not that hard to learn it because I knew what I wanted already.
Yeah.
I had it already from other softwares. I was like, okay, this is how I work, and I know already what I want. So I have a list, and I want these things, and then I look them up, and I hit those targets, and then in 2 days, I'm like, okay, I have my scene built, and I never used, or I didn't use Unreal that much before, and I actually forgot everything about it. Then I picked it up again, and I was like, okay, it didn't take me that long to actually pick that up because I knew what I wanted.
Yeah. And like, I think I noticed when you were showing us your Unreal Engine window that you had, like, it almost looked like you had something you could like send it straight to Octane, or how are you rendering out of Unreal?
No, I just do a screen grab.
Oh, rad. Okay.
Yeah, just I tried to render, but so they have a feature now for Unreal 4 where you can actually do high quality renders, but it was taking me a bit more time to kind of learn how to do it, and I was like, I don't think it was still looking gamey, which I think they're going to bridge the gap with Unreal 5, and that's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah,
but it still looks a bit gamey, and I was thinking, okay, it's getting there, but I think I'm not ready for it yet. So I was like, I think at that point, that's why I went back to Octane to use something that I already knew, because I was like, okay, I have to learn more about it. Right, and that's going to be for another time.
I see. Okay.
That's for example, also, and kind of get back to that question, is that how long it took me to learn it. It didn't take me that long because I knew what I wanted. But then you could also spend a lot more time in it. You could spend time learning about how to shape things, how to go into every details of every functions, and they have blueprints and stuff. You can use all that, but then it's like, well, you could spend a lot of time learning everything, but what's your goal?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
What's your goal?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like a kid in a candy store too. It's like you have to figure out. You can't do everything at once, right?
Yeah, it's easy to get lost. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so wanted to circle back just a little bit to the whole optimization thing, and how far you're taking, for example, like your digital sculpt. So I noticed when you're showing us, there was some, detailing and forms that you were, projecting in ZBrush to optimize your model. But then when you brought it into Photoshop, it seemed like you were also utilizing some photo texturing and things like that as well.
Yeah.
How do you parse out for yourself how much you're going to do in 3D for, like, say, your hero asset like that, and how much you want to take care of in Photoshop?
Okay. So for the armor, since that's the asset that I spent the most time on, I would spend as much time as possible. So what I cared here, it depends on how much time you have, right? The time that I had here was kind of unlimited, so I was thinking, okay, I want it to look good, so I would spend a good 80 to 90% in CG, right? So I would sculpt maybe not every detail. So for example, every primary and secondary shapes, for sure, it's gonna be in the sculpt. I'm not gonna do this in 2D, right? So basically, when I get in 2D and I get into Photoshop, all my shapes are here, right? If you look at this image, for example, everything is already rendered, everything is built. That's what I'm gonna do in 3D. And then what I'm gonna do with the 2D is I'm gonna enhance the image, right? This is my process. Not everybody works that way, and also I don't always work that way. But
Sure.
But that's the process that I kind of follow most of the time. I try to bring 80 to 90% quality of the 3D out of the 3D, and then with the 2D I will enhance that. So if there's like specularity that in 2D I didn't get, or I didn't get in the sculpt, then I would just paint it, right?
Yeah.
That I would cheat, basically. I would pretend I did it in CG, but I actually didn't.
I've never heard somebody describe cheating the other direction.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. That's true.
That's great. I love it. Okay. Yeah, no, and I think that's super helpful. And it's like you've got your toolbox. Like, you know what your capabilities are in 2D and painting, you know what your capabilities are in 3D, and you're taking the right arrow out of the quiver at the right time. Yeah. So a couple more questions from the chat.
Okay.
Got someone who said, I'm 37 and I just graduated art school. I'm getting good at a lot of different parts of 3D, and I like doing a lot of different work. What should I be looking for a job in? Viz dev, concept art? I want to tailor my portfolio to something, but it sounds like they're still needing to decide.
Okay.
Pick a direction.
Okay. It's a funny question, because it happened to me too. While I was at Gnomon, actually, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, okay, so since I don't know what I want to do, I'm going to learn everything, right? And prior to Gnomon, I went to comic book school. So I did a lot of 2D, a lot of drawing. And I was like, okay, right? I was like, my education is not done, and I didn't want to end up working in my apartment by myself forever. So I was like, I want to work with people. So I started to learn CG. And then in CG, when I was at Gnomon, I was like, I don't know if I want to do characters. I don't know if I want to do environments. I don't know if I want to be a modeler. I like concepts. I like this, I like that, but I couldn't really focus on anything. And I was actually scared for a while. For a long time, I was a bit scared. I was like, it's kind of scary because I don't know what I want to do, and I don't know if I get a job. Especially people were like, well, if you're not a modeler and you don't have a modeler reel, you're not going to get a job as modeling, right? And so I was like, okay, anyways, since I don't know what I'm going to do, I'm going to learn everything. So I learned everything. I learned about modeling. I learned about CG, lighting, texturing, a bit of compositing. And then I started to learn about matte painting. And I was also doing a lot of design. I took a lot of the design classes as well. So all that, in the end, when I got my first job, I went to Double Negative in London, and they used me for that, since I didn't know what to do and I was doing everything. They're like, well, that's great, because you're going to do lighting, you're going to do modeling, you're going to do matte painting. And that's what I did. And today is the same. At Blue Sky, I do the same thing. I do a lot of modeling. I do some material work. When there's matte painting to do, I do it too. When I was at Method, I did concept art. So, I would say if you don't know what you want to do, that's fine. And I have students also ask me those questions sometimes. I don't know what to do. I tell them it's okay if you don't know. Just learn everything. It'll pay off eventually. I mean, it paid off for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually why we structure the curriculum the way that we do at Gnomon. Like our foundational 3D training is like literally learning the entire pipeline.
Oh yeah, totally. And
so
then,
that you could have many more doors open to you.
oh yeah, of course. You have more doors open, and it keeps you curious, keeps your brain young. You know, you have to keep. I mean, I think you have to keep learning all the time. It doesn't matter if you master or you think you master an area, just keep learning another thing, because if you learn something here, it'll help you for something else, you know. It's always nothing is really learned for in and it goes to trash or whatever. Everything you do, everything you learn goes back somewhere else. It goes back into something that you're doing today.
Yeah, 100%. And it's crazy, even the stuff that doesn't seem to be art related that you and all feeds that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to dovetail with that last question and ask, so yeah, it's actually a really good place to be in to know how to do a lot of different things. But when it comes to, say, applying to a specific job, right? We all know that you want to tailor your portfolio to the studio, to the kind of project you're asking to work on. At that point, like if you were in that position, would you show a lot of your different kinds of skill sets, but show things that visually look like their style? Or would you pick only certain skill sets for a certain position? Like how do you go about presenting yourself with as broad a skill set as you have?
Okay, so for example, if there is a studio that I would like to work on at, and that studio is only hiring modelers. Okay, let me just put this up because I realized I was looking down. That's my other screen. Okay, so if there's a studio I like and I hire modelers right now, for example, I would, and I've done that before, right? I would tailor my reel a bit more specifically towards modeling and using my pieces that I've done the best modeling job on, right? And I would put that in there. And this is my modeling reel, for example. And I would tell them, focus on the modeling, don't look at other things, because that's what the job I'm applying for. Oftentimes they won't do that. They'll look at everything anyways, because they'll be like, oh, you can do texturing too. Oh, that's great. You got the job because you can also do the material, We prefer having someone who, okay, you're good at modeling, but oh, you can do other things. Well, you're better than someone that only does modeling. I've heard that a few times, right? So I would, if I want to apply for a certain style, obviously you have to hit the style. If you don't have it, then you have to work for it, right? You have to work, and I've done that before too. If I want to work at a place, then I'll build a portfolio, and I'll only present that. So just tailor it to what you want to do, right? If you want to do texture, don't show modeling or anything else. Just show your texture work. If you want to do a stylized animated show, just show your a demo reel that you make for that, right? So show animated style. That's for whatever assets, things you want to do, like modeling or texturing or matte painting.
Yeah.
Just tailor it to what you want to do. I think you'll have a higher chance of landing the job. And then you can also tell them, okay, at the end of the reel, you can say, I can also do those things. And then I'm always happy to see what else you can do.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
We've got another question that's come in. What advice do you have for a 3D artist looking to get into 2D art and concept? I'm an environment artist working in video games. Let's see. And currently right now I'm working on like sketching, value, and fundamentals and stuff like that. So what recommendations would you have for this person?
So what you can do is use your knowledge of 3D. It's going to sound weird, right? But take your knowledge that you have in 3D and put that back into 2D. So I'll give you a more concrete example. So you're an environment artist in games, so you probably know about shading and material and lighting. Because the environment artists are more generalists, right? So you know about those things. And the principles are the same. If you apply and you know how lighting works in CG, you will be able to transfer that back into 2D, I think, right? Certain things that when you're gonna learn how to lighting and by painting, you're gonna know certain properties because you've done it in CG, right? It's like do something, but it's still helping you to do something else. So actually, I think 3D made me a better 2D artist as well, right? Because I'm like, oh, okay, that's how it works when it hits the surface, and then you print that into your mind as well, so you can transfer that back into 2D. I think you can do that. Just don't completely forget about 3D or be like, okay, 2D is 2D and that's what I have to focus on. But remember that 3D will help you a lot to get the 2D right as well. If you don't forget, where you came from, that helps. It helped me before. I know it helped other artists as well. A lot of artists that I know that they've done 3D lighting and they became concept artists, and they apply those principles. For example, the passes, right? They would paint flat 2D colors, and then they would paint the shadow on top of it, right? And then they would paint the ambient occlusion, then they would paint the lighting, then they would paint the colors to give the mood. But all that, if you think about it, it's the same as 3D, actually. You're just doing it in 2D. So the principles are actually the same.
Yeah, I'm just at the beginning of that journey, and I've quickly discovered that, like, working in 3D, like especially like digital sculpting, and you start to build an internal reference for what 3D forms look like, how the ambient occlusion works, all that stuff.
Yeah,
it's definitely upping my 2D game for sure.
Yeah.
We've got another question. I'm having, and I'm sort of, and I hope I'm understanding the question correctly. But kind of like this is a personal project you're showing us, and their question kind of has to do with navigating the rigors of working and not getting burnt out and finding time for personal work. So they're just saying, I'm having issues being motivated and keeping up with consistency between work and personal. How do you keep, how do you keep, from burnout in the work and have a healthy career? They're saying they just graduated and they feel burnout all the time.
Okay. Well, that's a touchy subject.
Sure.
It depends on a lot of things. I can talk about my personal experience.
Sure.
And it's probably different for everybody, right? But when I started to work in the industry, I was burned out. Same. I just it was difficult. Coming home after 6 or sometimes after midnight, well, you can't do projects, right? Because you did a lot of overtime. There's a lot of pressure. So I think when that happened to me, I just wanted to find a way to get rid of it, right? There's something that stresses me in my life, and it's something I love to do. So what I do is like, okay, I want to go to a place where the work is better, for example. Then I would look for those places, and I would apply for those places. And if I don't have the portfolio for it, then now I have the motivation, right? Even if I'm tired, I have the motivation and be like, okay, it's 11 at night. I just came from work. I can still spend 30 minutes. 30 minutes is still better than nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So I would spend that time. And then after, hopefully not too long, a month or 2, 3, sometimes it could take 6 months, sometimes it could take a year. Then I would build a new reel or a new portfolio, and I would apply. And I would get the job, right? And then I know that place has a better work environment. And then my life balance got better. That's kind of how I changed my burnout things, and also I'm saying no.
Absolutely.
It's more about like setting your priorities straight. I think, it's like I think personal projects are important because it makes you evolve as an artist. You experiment, you learn, and then sometimes I just have to say I can't, and I just have to focus on my own work.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's what happened for me.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I love how you also, like, you kind of hijacked your own burnout, right? Like you said, well, what's the carrot that I need?
Yeah,
well, the carrot that I need is to change my situation.
Oh yeah.
The way to change my situation is to do personal work.
Yeah, do personal work. Get better at it. You'll get better work. You go to better places eventually. Mm-hmm. The motivation is you have to find it yourself. It's and don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's hard for me, and sometimes I spent 6 months doing nothing. That happened to me. Even at the beginning, for 2 years after starting work, I didn't do any personal work at all, almost nothing, because I was into the work. Your work, it's demanding, so you don't really have time. And then that's one day when the project is calm or you get let go because sometimes it's contract, right? So the contract is done, and I'm like, oh wow, actually I have nothing to do for a month, and I spent 2 years doing nothing. So then that's the time. Then sometimes you realize it too. And sometimes you're not motivated. It's hard, but motivation comes by meeting other artists too. I go on ArtStation. I'm like, oh, damn, those guys are good. And trying to reach those levels too. So beating yourself at your own art, if I can say it that way, will keep you motivated. That's what keeps me motivated. I'm like, okay, today I can do this. Now tomorrow, what can I do better? Right? How can I make my work, for example, for this personal project, how can I make that better? How can I do another project that will go beyond it? Right? That's kind of how things keep me motivated as well.
Yeah, well, and I think along those lines, obviously the project you just showed us is really, really cool, and that's enough motivation in itself just to do something really cool, which is okay. Thanks. But how did you come to the point of like, yeah, I want to do my own interpretation of a Frank Frazetta character and do it in 3D?
I think what happened was that I went back into nostalgia, and I remember discovering the artist. I think I opened my hard drive and I was like, oh, there's some old stuff that I gathered before from Frank Frazetta, and I was looking at it, and then I was like, oh, okay. I remember that time when I was in comic book school, in art school, and I was like, we're learning all about this dude, and then I was thinking, oh, the Death Dealer. That was the piece that made me really think, oh, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, right? And then I was like, just looking at it, and I was thinking, what if this is from the 70s? So I was not even born when that was up, and I was thinking, a lot of things gets rebooted today, and I was like, oh, what if we would do something about this project, and a studio would buy the rights and would make a Death Dealer game or a Death Dealer movie? I was like, what would that look like? So it just got me curious, and it's something that I like, right? I was passionate about, and I was thinking, what if they would do that, or what if a director would want to do it? How would they go about it? That's kind of how I thought it. I was like, if I want to make this, and I would want to make it into a movie in Hollywood or into a big game, how would I present it to studios, for example? It was not that I would do it, but I was thinking, as a personal project, I kind of want to know how to do it, and that's kind of how it was born, in a way. Yeah. And then from there, it was fun on fun. It was just like, yeah.
That's great too. I think, I don't know. I know that I've fallen into the trap of like, well, I've got to do work on my personal time because I have to be better. It's almost like you're putting yourself to work, rather than enjoying your own art. Yeah. So just finding that muse, finding that nostalgia, that thing you love, like, it should be the thing that you're addicted to, right? Like, you can't wait to do it. Yes. To get home. Yeah,
exactly. Do what you love. Absolutely. Do what you love. Have fun doing it. And I've done, sometimes I did personal work and I didn't have any fun on it, and I was upset with myself. Upset with the work, and I was like, why am I even doing this? I'm not having fun. I don't feel like I'm learning anything. So, when you want to stay motivated doing personal work, do something that you like, even if it's not related to what you do at work. But if you like it and you're having fun and you're learning, then do it. Just have fun with it. Yeah.
Totally. Well, Olivier, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys,
for giving your time, but also just like taking the time to really crack open your process.
Of course.
And, all of those goodies, all those steps along the way. I know what I'm going to do after I finish the stream. I know what I want to learn next for sure. It's super inspiring. So yeah, thanks for coming on the stream. And just want to say to all of our guests watching, whether you're on Twitch or you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook, any of those platforms, Gnomon maintains a library on our YouTube page. If you go under playlists, we've got over 100 events that we've streamed. Just like this event, you can go back, and if you're looking for inspiration, there's a ton of stuff to pull from there. Going back and checking out some of those videos. You can also watch backlogs of what we streamed on our Twitch channel. And we're creating more and more content every week, especially now with social distancing and everything that's going on. Gnomon's really making an effort to provide more streaming content, whether it's a really cool event like we've had tonight, or it's more educational, or it's even learning more about Gnomon and our academic offerings. Definitely come back. Follow us on social media if you want to be the first to know what the next thing coming up is. I definitely want to invite you back to our live stream On Wednesday, in fact, every Wednesday, our Chief Creative Officer, Josh Herman, who's also an industry veteran, he hosts an art jam every Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 1 in the afternoon. And lately he's been actually concepting Dungeons and Dragons characters that he rolls up at random, like at the beginning of the stream, and he starts concepting out these characters in ZBrush. It's been super fun. So you're looking for somebody to hang out with, inspire you in your art while you're doing your thing. Definitely tune in on that. And then we have many more events coming up that you can check out. We also have a great event coming up soon on Friday, October 2nd. And that's going to be a virtual info session about Gnomon. But on the front end of that, we're going to have a guest artist come on and share about his work on Ghosts of Tsushima. So definitely come back, check out the streams. But for now, guys, just stay safe, stay creative. I'm Adam Hartel. I want to thank Olivier for his time again. I want to thank my colleague, Miranda, who's been technically producing the stream on the back end. And just continue to be creative, guys, and be safe. And we'll see you back here again in the future.